Welcome to the Big Igloo Podcast.
Shalom.
Mark Theology and Dumb Dad Jokes. Travis, you said you've got a dumb dad joke for us here.
In Theology Thursday,
yes,
I was doing a little bit of just research on atheism.
Okay.
And did you know that it's a non-profit organization?
Wow.
Non-profit organization.
Don't worry. We got listeners out here. It won't hit them for 3 days. So anyway, they got to bring their theology game up to get that joke a little bit. So non-profit, profit. Just say the word profit. Okay. All right. Nice job, Travis. All right. Well, hey, we're continuing on this kind of new series we just launched into, this Hollywood Heroes. And so we're exploring just kind of the different ways that Hollywood stories intersect with truths, different ideas of truth and how life really is. And of course, that's what draws us to movies and things like that. We're storytelling creatures. We're meaning making creatures. Sure. And so it's only natural that obviously we're going to gravitate towards some of these things. But, C.S. Lewis, we kind of talked about this in the last episode. It's like, what if there is an ultimate story that is true?
Yeah.
Right. And so now as we move through this thing, here's the thing. I want you to, our listeners, viewers, this is not like outright endorsement of all of these movies or anything like that. We're not telling you have to go out and see these movies. There might even be some of these movies that maybe we haven't even seen. Yeah. But the idea is that are there themes that we're aware of? Are there things that we can see in these stories that we can think redemptively towards? And really the big idea through all of this is this idea of receive, reject, redeem. And I would say no matter what movie you're watching in the theater, or no matter what show you're watching on television, or what you're reading from the library, what can you receive? What must we reject? And what can be redeemed? Sure. And all of those things. I mean, we just went through, Easter season here at our church, and we've, had some, Easter eggs on our lawn, And a lot of people are like, what does that have to do with the cross? I don't know. All right. But here's the thing. And there's people that get into different cultural practices and all that kind of stuff. And we've just always looked at something like that, or even like Halloween, when we give out candy, we do trunk or treat, things like that. No, I can't participate in everything that the culture does. There's certain things I don't participate with fear on Halloween. You're not going to see my kids dressed up as little demons, right? No matter how they're acting, right? You're not going to see, I'm not going to dress my kids up as evil things, but at the same time, it's not wrong to dress up and do make-believe and to go ask strangers for candy. I'm like, actually, my whole childhood was don't take strangers for candy. I said that backwards. Don't take candy from strangers. I'm getting over some sort of cold or something, everybody, so you probably hear my voice a little bit. But anyway, well, we're going to talk about Iron Man.
Yeah.
All right, Iron Man. Now, here's the deal, gentlemen. You guys are more the Marvel experts here. I've seen the movies, but, that's about as far as I've gone with these things. So, and listen, I'll probably say I've seen every Marvel movie once, I think, maybe. Okay. I think maybe Ant-Man I saw like twice or whatever. But so you guys have definitely I'll default or defer to your expertise here. Nice. So let's talk about Iron Man for a second. As we look at, maybe we'll save the receive, reject, redeem. We'll save that maybe for the end as we kind of wrap it up. Maybe some of our takeaways. What can we do from Iron Man? But let's talk about Iron Man. What do we see in his story? What do we see in his story that is helpful or beneficial to us?
I guess the first thing that stuck out to me in the book, I guess I shouldn't say first because I don't remember the chronological order of all this, but I really enjoyed the aspect how the original purpose of Iron Man was not created to be liked, in a sense.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was interesting.
And it was a self-reflection point because a lot of the things that Tony wanted is inherently what we want in human nature.
Yeah.
And so it was interesting that was his perspective as an author or a creator of being like, hey, this is somebody the audience isn't going to like, but a lot of what they don't like about him is what's reflected in humanity.
That's so, because here's the thing, honestly, when I started watching Marvel movies and stuff like that, I watched the first Iron Man and I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Mm-hmm. By the second or third, I just was like, I didn't like it and stuff. And I'll tell you, personally, could not stand Tony Stark.
Right.
I don't like him. I didn't like him.
Sure.
And honestly, I really was just like, why are we holding up this guy? Because all I saw was this womanizer, saw this rich boy who has all this stuff, and it's like you're kind of a scoundrel. Like, and here's the thing. I'm coming to this. I've never read the comic books. I've never done anything like that. But Tony Stark was hard for me. Like it was one of these like characters. Did you guys? How did you take those things? I really just didn't like him. Sure. Therefore, I've not really ever liked Iron Man. And it wasn't until Endgame that I was like, whoa,
Go Iron Man.
And so again, massive spoiler alerts if you've not been up on the whole Marvel series. But I wasn't expecting that. But here's the thing: I naturally, I don't like those kind of characters in movies.
Right. Sure.
I don't like the playboys. I don't like the womanizers. I don't like just people like that. They've always turned me off. And even in real life, like even maybe certain, quote unquote hero athletes or whatever. Right. It's like, I can respect their game, but then it's like when they're just scoundrels out there in the world, it's like, it's really hard for me to like them. And so Tony Stark was just more of that for me where I was like, I don't like this. And so it kind of soured me on the whole, Marvel franchise, but
as a character develops, like you at the first Iron Man, we only know such a small glimpse of Tony Stark.
Yeah.
And you think, as the book says, or this book says, that he lives life on his own terms.
Yeah.
And that's his attitude, and that's what he's taken. But then as the movies go and as the story unfolds, you begin to realize and get a glimpse of why Tony is beginning to act the way he does. Yeah. And it's just, I was with you in the first place. I was kind of like, this guy's I wasn't so much, I didn't like him as a person. It was more of like, this guy's a hero. Right. Like, he's supposed to be one of our heroes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I'm with you guys. Because Captain America was like, this guy is amazing.
Yeah.
And Tony Stark was like, it's like,
Yeah, I know exactly. Well, and that's okay. So let me ask you this, John. And you've been kind of doing the youth pastor thing here for a couple of years and stuff like that. Let me ask you, has it affected how you see things? And here's, maybe I'll qualify it by this, because like what you just said, that whole, he just walks to his own, the beat of his own drum, or he's just about himself and all that kind of stuff. It's hard for me because as a pastor, I get a front row seat into a lot of people's lives. Right. And I think the thing that's hard for me, I can't just watch movies where people just go all out, hedonistically, just about their own pleasures and stuff, because I'm like, I'm reminded of this every day.
Right. Yeah.
I'm trying to call people away from their own, lustful desires and stuff like that. That I'm like, to just see more and more of it. It actually has like soured me probably from a lot of movies, because I'm like, man, that's the thing I'm fighting. I don't know. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Do you ever sense that tension, or have you noticed a shift, since maybe taking on the responsibility of ministry? Travis, you can comment on this as well, but.
You want to go first, or?
No, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I definitely have. There has been a block in my head, though, that, I don't know, I've always been a big movie guy. And so there is a sense where I desensitize it in my head because it's a movie and I know that. Doesn't make it any more right, the message the movie is saying, but there is a desensitization in my head that goes on. In that sense of
what is it, desensitized, or are you just saying, hey, this is a movie I can emotionally separate from?
That's kind of what more so,
you know what I mean, because I think as long as you're aware of stuff like that, don't get me wrong, because I'm sure I compartmentalize on some level too. There's probably some things where I'm like, I don't approve of this, but I do find aspects of this entertaining.
I will say though, I do find that viewpoint of, it is sad to me that people's like, oh, that guy has the life. Right. You know what I mean? Bringing it out like that's the goal, the ultimate goal I want to get to. I do find it more sad now than I had before, that like that's what people are chasing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But you're right. I didn't realize the intention between the creator was, I'm going to create this guy who's just all out consumer, right? Just all about himself and all that. I'm going to give that to the people, even though that's not what they want, but they're going to like him.
And it plays into the idea of once Tony begins to realize, and he correlated with obviously God and his father, but once Tony began to realize that he had a father that actually did love him, even though that wasn't an experience, his whole identity changed, which Travis is going to touch up on. Sure. But it's just pretty interesting to see how the whole story unfolded, with the genesis of it being he wasn't going to be somebody that was liked. Yeah. Yeah. This is very interesting.
For sure. Well, yeah, that's Hollywood in general. Like, I mean, it's just, especially, I mean, where I'm at kind of in my walk with Christ,
Yeah.
understanding the just the garbage that like Hollywood will promote and like, man, and it's like every kid says, oh man, I want to be like, the famous football star.
Yeah.
And it's like, it turns out it's like, I mean, even like some of the Disney Channel stars and just the wreck that's giving these actors at a young age everything that they want. Just, I mean, it ruins them.
Yeah.
They get, deep into drugs and all that stuff. And so it's just like realizing that, man, you could have everything, but have nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think it was just the aggressiveness of Tony Stark's character that, again, I just found that it probably soured me so fast that I wasn't paying attention to some of the nuances going on. Because what I do find fascinating, and this is where I think faith and the film intersect, is when you understand that Tony Stark's lifestyle, that thing actually becomes the thing that actually puts his life in jeopardy.
Yeah.
And you guys could probably speak to this more than me because, again, I've just kind of seen the movie once, right? But as I understand it, it's his technology, it's his weapons, it's his stuff that, again, he's out there to make money and be the businessman. But those are the things that actually end up coming back and harming him, ultimately taking his life. I mean, would that be a fair assessment? I mean,
yeah, absolutely. Well, it's the whole idea of just him, as an arms dealer.
Yes.
This. I mean, he has this money making thing that his whole life is about. And we kind of see the switch in the first movie too, of like he realizes, oh my goodness, that his very technology that he was using was kind of used against him and almost killed him.
Yep.
And so then you see at the very end of like Endgame, where it's like, his technology and all this kind of comes to bite him in the butt, especially with like Ultron or So
it's just
And so again, it's interesting, and we'll maybe see this though even with like Lord of the Rings. So you see this element woven into a film where the desire of humanity, just unbridled desire, becomes a weapon that comes back against us.
Yeah.
Isn't that, really an interesting descriptor of sin?
Oh man, yeah.
Right? Yeah. How the things that we throw ourselves into, the things that we invest in. Tony Stark's all about himself, right? And that's what sin is. Sin is disordered love. It's a love that's bent in. It's iniquity. It's always self-fulfilling. It's never others focused. It's always back in on the self. And so when you look at sin from this angle, Tony Stark is the epitome of that. Sure. And so he's different than Captain America because, Captain America is this, he's this paragon of virtue. I mean, he's this guy that we want to be like, that we want to, and he's kind of the moral compass for the group. But Tony Stark is the opposite of that.
Right.
And what's crazy is like, and I find it really interesting too. These are kind of the cool little takeaways. That's like, Tony Stark, what happens to his heart? I mean, it's like,
he gets a piece of shrapnel.
Right. That's right. Yep. That gets, whatever. And so he has to have a machine thingy, a hole in his chest with a magnet. I don't know.
No, exactly. Because it's like it's preventing it from passing through his heart.
That's right. That's right. And that thing's always got to. So it's like it's interesting because you look at when God promises in Ezekiel to the children of Israel, I'll give you a heart. I'll remove the heart of stone, give you a heart of flesh, right? Yeah. Tony Stark gets like this updated, like this whole thing that keeps him alive. It's this internet, right? It's this thing that's like, and without that, he's going to die.
Sure.
Right? If you think about the sustaining work of Christ, without complete dependency on who Christ is, I need a new heart. And so isn't it interesting? The thing with what I like about Iron Man is it really kind of is this journey. Especially if you take this whole story arc, it is the life of sanctification.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tony Stark's life is a life of sanctification. It's like he's not just perfect overnight, but he's on this journey where he moves from being selfish to ultimately being selfless.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting that kind of going back to what you said, the sin thing of people, in a sense, their downfall is their own creation of their own desires, in a sense. What's funny about it is that it's like, okay, I did this sin, I did this thing, it hurt, it messed up, it was obviously not good.
Yeah.
And then people go straight back to it.
Yeah.
And it's just funny that even in this story, Tony pretty much went straight back to it up until the end.
Yeah.
And that's
very true.
Yes, he learned through it, but he was still going back to the very thing that was destroying him. I mean, he never once stopped creating the weapons and weaponizing things. And he did do a lot of fight for good, but it was also and it touches up in here. He did a lot of it. I think his dad even quoted had a quote in here that said, doing the overall good very rarely outweighed my selfish desires. And it's that idea of that Tony kind of was the man that he was involved as long as it helped him.
Yeah.
And it's just funny that it's a funny correlation of just how we can be so critical of Tony Stark, yet we are so blind to our own ambitions and you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very true.
There was a quote in the book, and this just made me think of it, that we rarely do people do evil things for the evil's sake, but we do evil things to get good things. And so it's like this, like, so, I mean, this idea of like, I mean, obviously Tony has the money, he has the power, like all this stuff that kind of, and we see those are good things if they're done, you know, in a godly way. But I mean, as humanity, like all of us have a fallen nature, obviously. That we take shortcuts to those things, and those shortcuts to get money, to get sex, to get power, that end up destroying us. And so it's getting back to what you said.
Yeah. Well, and that's an interesting thing because I look at that and just philosophically it makes me think of Machiavellianism, right? You know, the Machiavelli, this idea.
You're speaking Greek to me, man. Or Latin. It's Latin.
Machiavelli?
No.
I do not know.
You would know. He's the one who coined the phrase, the ends justify the means.
Oh, okay.
That's Machiavellianism, okay? The ends justify the means, which just means that it doesn't matter how you get there as long as you get to this point. And the thing of it is, like, when you understand that phrase, man, Machiavellianism is all over in our films, you know, and it's the Jack Bauer. I mean, this is like, you know, that's 24 or like, it's like we root for that. We root for that spy hero who's going to torture the terrorists to get the information to find out where the nuke's going to go off. But here's the problem with it is when you look at that, you think, well, it's the ultimate good. No, it's really Machiavellianism.
Right.
You're just saying that the ends justify the means. You're saying it doesn't matter as long as we get this good result. And so, but that taps into what you're saying, how we don't just do evil for the sake of evil most of the time. We do evil to try to get at some good. But that makes me cringe even just saying it. But it's true of humanity.
Yeah.
But I would say that's not a biblical philosophy. I'd say that's imported.
Honestly, I think that's a great transition to, you should talk about like the moral argument then that was brought up in the book.
So
what good is.
Totally. So the cool thing with Iron Man is like he's got like 6 hours worth of screen time, like throughout. I mean, like it's the most of like any superhero. In the MCU.
Okay.
And so like the cool thing is we do get it. We see this huge arc, and we see Iron Man a ton. Like I mean, he was one of the first movies to start the whole MCU.
Yeah.
Right.
And so watching that arc, it's like this struggle to find purpose. And so we kind of start to see like Iron Man. He starts off as this billionaire philanthropist, you know, playboy. And he's kind of like trying to find this way to like seek purpose. Like it's kind of self-absorbed, but like what you said, we see the arc of at the end, he kind of realizes, man, I'm going to sacrifice my life to save all these people. And the cool thing with purpose is like, purpose comes from having some sort of like objective, like standard, true for everybody at all times, everywhere, like morality.
Right.
And so the cool thing with that is like, man, Iron Man kind of, he does see the purpose of like sacrificing his own life, giving up his wife and daughter, this life that he's kind of built, and ultimately laying it all down.
You know, there's a really good aspect to this story where, you know, before it'd be totally fair to say that he found purpose in his joy and his money, his knowledge, his wife, those things. It'd be totally fair to say that.
Sure.
And then there's a quote in here that says, I have the woman, I have the money, why can't I sleep?
Yeah. Wow.
And it's that idea of he's realizing that the things he's putting stock in isn't fulfilling him.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of the sacrifice is the full circle of, okay, this is bigger than me.
Yeah.
But it's just a
And Frank, I was going to say, Frank did a great job. I'm glad he pulled Solomon in on this because it's like this whole idea of like Solomon being like the richest ruler, having everything that, you know, and yet he at the end of it of like all this pursuit of money and all this stuff that it's like all of it's worthless.
Yeah.
Vanity.
Well, and that plays into, so, you know, you've got Iron Man, that suit, you know, the thing, this whole statement of does the man make the suit or does the suit make the man? Right. And I think that when you get to the end of the series, I think you can definitely are you? It's the man that makes the suit.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing. This whole theme that does run throughout Iron Man is this thing where we think it's something external that drives us. It's the money, it's the fame, it's the women, it's the whatever, right? That's Tony Stark's story, but it's largely unfulfilling, right?
Right.
And then he has that critical scene with Spider-Man when Spider-Man goes and wants to use the suit to do his own thing. Sure. And he just basically looks at him and just says, hey, if you can't, now I'm butchering this is the Kris File paraphrase, right? But it's like basically like he looks at him and he says, to Peter Parker, he looks at him, he says, hey, if you can't be you without the suit, then you don't need the suit.
Yeah.
Right.
And which is really crazy for a guy like Tony Stark, like Iron Man, who's got all of these gadgets and stuff, and you think that's what makes him, but he's coming to a place of realization that no, as the Bible says, it's the things that flow from the heart.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's the things that proceed from the heart. That's who you are. And those things will either enhance the other things around you, or if it's empty in the first place, none of this is going to matter.
Yeah.
And so that's an incredible theme that plays throughout that. And it's this place of identity. And I mean, how crazy that Iron Man taps into this, that the identity is not about the suit. It's about the person. It's about who are you?
That's in almost every Marvel movie. I mean, Captain America, he said, don't become a good soldier, be a good man. Right? Yep. Then the suit. And then Thor, he can't lift the hammer unless he's worthy. Yeah. And it's the idea that it's funny that almost every movie's tapped into this place that, this will only amplify your most inner self.
Well, and a phrase that we can't, that I this was said a lot with my cohort that I studied with at seminary, that doing should flow from being.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
We get busy doing things and we make that our identity, or we try to, and it never works that way. But really, if we just are, then what we do flows out of who we are. That's the unending cycle, right? That's the place where there's the most fulfillment and joy and energy and all that. Right. So
Well, just talking about Solomon is like, and just playing off of that, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it.
Right.
Proverbs 4:23.
There you go. Way to bring the theology.
That's right.
Yes.
You made it legal. We actually quoted the Bible. I was shooting from the hip.
Right on.
Yeah. No, that's so good. And so, what, Travis, I know like one of the themes that you just tapping into that moral argument, what stood out to you? That's one of my favorite arguments. We'll have to do a apologetic series sometimes, but talk about the moral argument and how it applies to Iron Man.
So, the objective, for the moral argument, it says if objective morals and values don't exist, then God does not exist.
Okay.
But objective morals, values do exist, therefore God exists. And so it's this idea of, can we have purpose, objective truth, and all these things without God? And so obviously we see like atheisms, they believe they don't claim to know God, they don't claim to be like him, but yet they still they can do good things.
Yeah.
But ultimately they can't.
But how do you arrive at
how do you justify why?
Good?
Absolutely.
And why is this good?
Yeah. And so this whole idea of having this, again, it's objective purpose, is like it all comes from having this objective moral like standard that God has set for us.
Yeah.
That ultimately, because God is good, that's where we derive like goodness from.
Right.
And so the opposite of that, obviously all the evil and stuff that we see, like the selfishness of Iron Man, comes from a place of evil. And it's interesting that evil is a very it's kind of an argument for, like, because we cry out, that's injustice. That's that's not fair. It's wrong for Tony Stark to be as selfish as he is. He kind of keeps all this stuff to himself. It's actually, it's a great argument for good, because it's like, how do you justify that? How do you know why is it? And that's the question. Why is so important in that, is because why is it bad? Right. Well, it's because it goes against the objective moral standard.
Right.
That God's placed in all of our hearts.
Yeah, I think Frank used in that book, he said, how do you know he says, you know, if you're watching a football game and you watch someone throw and make a pass
yes.
or whatever,
oh, man. Yeah.
how do you know that was a good thing for one of the teams? Yep. He says it's because you know the purpose of the game. If you know the purpose of the game is to get in the end zone, and that just got the team closer to the end zone, then you know that's a good thing for the team. Yeah. And so this idea that when we look at morality or we look at just purpose in life, when we say, hey, the objective of life is flourishing, whatever, then we know that anything that moves us towards flourishing is a good thing. Yeah. And so we can say that there are objective moral standards that these are the things, like you said. I mean, these things flow from the nature of God. Yeah. It's not that God is trying to measure up to some standard. He is the standard. It comes from his nature. And so because there are moral laws. In other words, if I were to say, is it wrong to kill toddlers for fun?
Absolutely.
Right. Yes.
No.
Oh.
Wow, you said that with kind of a crazy look in your eye. I thought it's like, oh, Travis is making a joke. No, Travis, it's wrong.
It's wrong. It's wrong.
What'd you think I said?
It's not wrong. That's what I heard. It's not wrong to kill.
No, it's I don't know. I'll have to go back and check the recording. Now you got me guessing. Oh, that's great. No, it's wrong. Just so we're clear, it's wrong.
Just so we're clear, yes, I'm not.
To kill toddlers for fun, right? Like
you think you know somebody,
like
right?
Right. All these years. Yes, we can say that's objectively wrong. That's more than just a preference. It's more than just that's true for you, but not for me. Like, no, that is because, and again, I mean, from a Judeo-Christian, we could say because people are made in the image of God, and life is sacred and precious, and all of that. That no, you cannot murder a toddler. That's just like, actually not murder anybody, but obviously toddlers make it more vivid in our mind.
Absolutely,
just as a way to say that's a standard that's true. No matter who you are, if all we are is just molecules in motion and there is no God, then really there's nothing wrong with Tony Stark living the life he lives. There's nothing wrong with him creating weapons that he can sell to other nations that'll turn back and blow him up. I mean, it's just dog eat dog world. Mm-hmm. And so I mean, there's a strong case that can be made, for the moral argument from this movie.
So good. Yeah, and I was gonna say, as Christianity, it's like love God and love your neighbor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, this whole idea of like Christianity is all about like it's looking outside of yourself. Yeah. And so like, to see that the parallel with Iron Man is like, he is going through this process of kind of like, he's getting less absorbed with himself and more about, the good of people around him.
Yeah. I just realized Travis is getting no babysitting gigs after this.
No, I'm not. It's all right.
I heard your podcast. So, hey, why don't we take this for a spin, maybe some closing thoughts, maybe think about the elements of receive, reject, redeem, when it comes to Iron Man. My closing thoughts and just kind of observation is, I think what's really interesting about this story, Travis, you just said this, so I don't want to repeat it all, but seeing his arc, I love the idea of just seeing this, understanding sometimes the slowness of sanctification. Yeah. I think we can receive that from that everyone's on a journey, different people in different places, and Iron Man has this journey. He's not perfect overnight. Like it's this process for him. What's really interesting though is I know we talked about Captain America being this moral person, but what's really interesting is how those two people play into each other. Right. Captain America probably moves Iron Man to think more of other people and what is the greater good and morality and all that kind of stuff. But there is an element of Tony's life where, because Captain America kind of comes back to him, later on and says, I decided to go get that life you kept telling me about or whatever, because he is so others focused that he's never about like kind of like maybe his own needs or desires, if there was any flaw with Captain America, it was kind of like, well, he didn't live his life. He was always living for. And so if there's one kind of redemptive angle, it's like, Tony's pushing on him, kind of gets him to step into that. So I think that's really kind of cool as well. But as far as what can we receive? Well, again, I think we can receive the whole sanctification thing. I think we can look at that. Reject, the Playboy lifestyle, the consumerism, all that kind of stuff. Got to reject all that, right? Mm-hmm. Things that we can redeem. And again, I think it's just looking at Tony. It's not a perfect story, but I think just looking at that and just seeing how our own journey can mirror that. So that's what I think. What about you guys?
Go for it, John.
Well, I really love the whole story about him and his father and that idea of purpose, and how Tony felt like is going back to that quote, like, I have this, I have that, why can't I sleep? And it all changed from when he created Barf. It's that memory one where he like recreate memories and live them. And when he found out that his father loved him, his purpose changed, and therefore his life became a sacrificial life.
Wow.
And so it's that idea of you can talk about purpose and identity all you want, but until you have that moment where you just have that moment with God, and it even talked about it in there, and I know people personally that struggle with this. He was saying Tony would have a hard time viewing God as a loving father because he didn't have one on earth.
Yeah.
And so it's the idea of once he realized the value of the loving of a loving father, it gives him purpose.
Yeah.
And that's where his life became sacrificial. Yeah. I think that's an easy correlation to our lives of like what purpose are we living? Is it a place where we know that God is a loving father who's for you, or is it something that you've been told and you've believed in a sense? Because there's a difference between just being told and knowing versus you know to your core that he loves you and there's a purpose for you.
Very true.
Good. There's a quote in here that it said, of all the kind of leading atheists of like the last 200 years,
right?
250 of those kind of leading atheists all had
like poor relationships with their father.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, talk about redeeming that aspect of fatherhood and the importance of having a good dad.
Yeah.
It's like that plays a crucial role. And it's pivotal for Iron Man. It's like he comes face to face with his dad. And like he realizes that his dad has this resentment of, man, I work too much. I don't spend enough time with my family. And then he comes out and has this father-son moment with Iron Man.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even realize it, but he's like, my greatest creation is Tony Stark. Like, it's my son.
Well, we didn't even talk about this, but the book does such a great job with this, that Robert Downey Jr.
Oh man, we didn't even talk about this.
I mean, the guy who plays Iron Man.
Yeah.
I mean, how similar his story was to Tony Stark's, and I mean, even his, having a famous father and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's so crazy, eerily close. So that's worth just reading the book there.
Absolutely.
Just going into, but all those parallels between Robert Downey Jr., the person, the actor, and his story and bout with drugs and alcohol and depression and all that kind of stuff, and how there's a great quote that he has, like it was a letter he wrote to his sister, right? Where what's crazy is he just talks about solace and solitude and getting away to quiet the noise so that God can speak, like, more or less. I don't know what Robert Downey, spiritual condition is like, but even he was like understanding that the craziness.
Well, yeah. So even, in the incarceration that he had, it's like, it forced him to stop.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you talk about like God taking a bad thing and turning it good. Like, the very thing that, kind of his rock bottom is a thing that, God's reshaping and forming.
Yeah.
And Robert Downey Jr.'s life,
that's right.
Not the actor, but, the actor,
not Tony Stark, the character, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, just how similar. And the fact that the director, Jon Favreau, like John's like, no, this is the guy. This is the guy put apart. And the fact that he saw that is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Anyway, wrap it up for us, Travis.
Yeah. I mean, so Iron Man, obviously at the very end, it's like, again, spoilers, but Iron Man at the very end of all this, the end kind of story arc for him is him laying down his life.
Yeah.
And just, man, at the beginning of Avengers, like Captain America tells Iron Man kind of face to face, like, you're not the man to make the self-sacrificing play. Like, you're not going to lay down on the wire and let the other guys crawl across you. And it's like, man, talk about, the importance of Jesus and just laying down his life for us. It's like, John 15, no greater love than this, that a man will lay down his life for his friends.
Yep.
And it's like, man, that is we see the gospel played out, perfectly through the story, man, of Iron Man. So absolutely.
Sweet. It's good stuff. Good stuff.
Yeah.
Well, we'll keep moving on through these Hollywood heroes. Hope you're enjoying this. Make sure to like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you know someone who would like to see or watch or listen to this podcast, let them know about it. And otherwise, we're on to another hero next week, and we'll catch you later. Deuces.